Hello, this is Mahadeva. Welcome back. And we're going to do another video on the 12 steps to transcend to the fifth dimension. And now we've made it up to step 5. Admitted to ourselves, our sponsor, and a higher dimensional consciousness, the fear-based survival responses that had created our ongoing 3D limitations. If you haven't watched the previous videos of step 1 through 4, please go back and watch them. This is step 5. These steps have to be done in order, and I don't recommend that you get ahead of yourself because you're going to try and figure out the road before you've even gotten there. So stop this right now if you haven't gone through steps 1 through 4. If you have, please keep going. So step 4 is the fulcrum. It's, even though you have to work all 12 steps, the fourth one is the most important. It's the one that actually creates your ability to disconnect from your 3D, fishbowl prison, and be able to go back and forth between higher dimensions and bringing that energy into your 3D experience, your physical experience. And this will be true no matter what dimension you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in 5th, 6th, 7th. You're going to want to have access to all of these dimensions. And the fourth step is the one that allows you to disconnect so that you can go to these higher dimensions. And that is what gives you the ability to change your identity. So remember that the reason why 3D is a prison is simply because of your addiction to your three-dimensional identity, which includes all of the feelings that come up and all of the thoughts that come up. People try to control their thoughts, they try to control their feelings, and that is a complete waste of time. You should have your feelings because your feelings are helpful for you to see the conflict that your soul has with your 3D ego identity. So you need your feelings to know what those are, but your feelings in the third dimension are trying to stimulate you to take actions in the third dimension, which only keep you rooted more deeply. It's like, if you're being squeezed by a boa constrictor, your instinct is to, use your muscles to try and fight against it. But every time you flex your muscles or every time that you exhale, the boa constrictor just waits for the opportunity to keep closing in on you. And that's what happens when you react from your third dimensional feelings, your third dimensional thoughts. All right. So in the fourth step, as you remember, if you haven't done this again, go back and do it. In the fourth step, you made this list. You wrote down all of the people, places, things, and institutions that you were angry at. So you wrote down who you were angry at, the cause, very briefly what the person did, your girlfriend broke up with you, and you looked at the fear-based instinct, self-preservation instincts, and you listed those: self-esteem, pride, security, finances. And you looked at, in the fourth column, what your part in it was. And you looked at what character defects, which are again things that you use to protect yourself, fear, self-pity, narcissism, and doing things like in here, taking comfort in feeling afraid, seeking people's approval, etc. Those are the things that created disappointment. So step 4 is about being disappointed. It doesn't minimize it. It sounds like I'm minimizing it, not getting what you want. Little kids get very upset when they don't get what they want. So if you and I, we're not able to have an ice cream sandwich at the moment, we'll be okay because, we're adults and we can wait, we can be patient. But a little kid doesn't know anything other than their immediate emotional and physical stimulus, their impulses. And if they want an ice cream sandwich, they want it right now. And if they don't get an ice cream sandwich now, they're never going to get one ever again in their life, and they flip out. They become disappointed. They have temper tantrums. So this is really all a resentment is. It could be, you wanted to be loved and taken care of by your parents, and instead they were abusive to you. So that's a big deal, and you're going to have a big response to that. But it still comes down to you had an expectation and you didn't get what you wanted. And you felt as though that was a threat to your survival. And this is, again, whenever people ask me, how can I get over my fear? How can I get over this feeling? And I always say the same thing. When did I ever tell you you were supposed to get over a feeling? You're supposed to learn how to act consciously regardless of your feelings. You have to have all of your feelings. You can't deny them, because if you push them down, they become stronger, and then you will act out passively, aggressively, or unconsciously. So in order to be conscious, you have to know what your feelings are, and you have to know what your expectations are. You want your husband or wife to love you. You want whatever it is that you want. Some of those wants are things that are, real issues, and some of them are very petty. But interestingly enough, if you don't get what it is that you want, you believe you're going to die, and then you have a temper tantrum, you have a resentment, you keep reliving that anger. And that then becomes your identity. We all see it. We look at other people that we, will say, get over it, grow up. We see that they've identified with their victimization, their disappointment. But we don't see it within ourselves. So that's what this step is all about. So now that we've written out this fourth step and we've looked at our fourth step inventory, fear inventory, then now we're ready to get rid of these things. So the first thing we have to do is we have to stop being a secret. Because a lot of us can come to these conclusions, but then we just hang on to it and we don't want anybody to know. And again, you're operating from the idea that people's opinions are more important than your essence. So you seek out somebody you trust. Now, ideally, this is your sponsor, but since we're creating a whole new 12-step program, even though, I haven't done anything, official yet with this, but, this is still something that you can do. You find somebody that you can trust. So somebody that's just going to listen. You don't want somebody that's going to give you advice unless they happen to be somebody who's done these 12 steps before. So this is why you want a sponsor, because a sponsor is somebody who's done the steps and they are only interested in helping you do the same thing they've done. You go to somebody who may not understand, you definitely don't want them to be giving advice. So if you find somebody you trust, a friend, a mentor, a priest, a counselor, say, I want to do a fifth step and I just need you to listen so I can get it out, but I don't need advice from you. Maybe if you do trust them, you might want their advice. But again, this is, back, 100 years ago when the Bill W. and Dr. Bob created the 12 steps, they would go to Catholic confession because that's what confession was. The priest would just sit and listen. And so they would do that so they could just get it out. But it's not like confession where you're relieving yourself of guilt, which doesn't accomplish anything because then you get the blessing and then you go out and do it again. This is about releasing it so it doesn't stay inside of you and control you. So all you do is you get together with your trusted person and you bring out the written, hopefully you've written this out, with pen and paper. And you bring out your fourth step and you simply read it, just like this. It'll sound like this. Okay, my first resentment is at God for forcing me to incarnate in a family of narcissists who abused me and devalued me, who forced me to be trapped in a reincarnation cycle on this prison planet. It affects my self-esteem, my pride, my security, my finances, my ambitions, my personal relations, my sex relations. My part, where was I to blame? It stimulated my fear, my self-pity, my narcissism, my unwillingness to take action. And the nature of my wrong is that I took comfort in feeling afraid. I kept seeking my parents' love by perpetuating my victimhood. I spread the fear to others, seeking solace and companionship, and sabotaging myself in the hopes of getting sympathy and ultimately my parents' attention. So you just say that. That's all that has to happen. Nobody has to comment on it. This is how simple this is. You just say it to somebody and somebody else hears it. Now you're no longer a secret. Then you take out your fear inventory. Same thing. Fears, afraid of, extraterrestrials, how it started, watching the film Communion, how I perpetuated the fear. I began researching abductions, watching Anunnaki videos on YouTube, whatever else. How the fear imprisoned me into the 3D fear prison by me choosing to believe that humans are helpless victims of Anunnakis, reptilians, and false beings of light, finding comfort in being afraid and conflating it with the knowledge of the truth. Now you're done. If you go through, your first one and go through every single one, and you could have hundreds of resentments, by the way. And just to be clear, once you do this fourth step, it's not like it's over for the rest of your life. Every time a resentment comes up, you do this same process again. That's called the 10th step. We'll get into that when we get into the 10th step. But point being, for right now, don't worry about the future. Just write this stuff down. And once you've read this one, then you pick up this one and you read that one, and you go through all the different things you're afraid of. And again, it's just about getting it out of your hamster wheel, so that it's not just staying inside of you. You're not looking for acceptance. You're not looking for absolution. You're not looking for any of that. There's just something that happens when you confess to another person the crazy stuff that goes on inside of your 3D brain. Now you're ready for step 6. And we're not going to talk about step 6 yet because you need to get to finish step 5. So there you go. It's real simple. You just pull out your 2 lists and you read them verbatim, and you don't embellish. You don't talk about your feelings. This is really important, this part. Once you read through it and you're done with it, you close it. You say, thank you for listening. I'm going to go and meditate now. And you leave. And you go and you meditate on it. And you're going to now have to experience what it's like to have these secrets. Again, when people first look at the 12 steps and they read the 4th step, not knowing what it is, they almost always, the way it's written, it brings you to that. Made a searching and fearless moral envy of yourself. 5, admitted to God, to yourself, and another human being the exact nature of your wrongs. That sounds like you're confessing all of the bad things you did. And in fact, there was a movie that came out in the 1980s. I can't remember the name of it, but it was about some guy getting sober. I think it was called Clean and Sober. And it was so horrible because when it came to the 4th step, the guy was writing on a napkin all the bad things he did. I stole a car, I stole money. And I'm watching this going, that's not the 4th step. What is this movie about? Whoever made the movie didn't even know what a 4th step was. But that's what you think a 4th step is. It's about confessing all of the bad things. That's not what it is. The secrets you're getting rid of aren't the bad things that you've done. The secrets you're getting rid of are the warped, self-centered, self-protection mechanisms that you are driven by. And you know what those are because your resentments, the disappointments, the things that you don't get in life, those are the things that drive you to do the bad things like stealing the car and stealing the money. You wouldn't have stole the car and stole the money if you didn't have these fears of not surviving. And so you don't even have to get into that. You can do that if you want, but do that after you've worked all 12 steps. And then if you want to unburden yourself, you can. But once you realize, oh, that's why I was doing all that, then you forgive yourself. When you get to step 9, one of the people you're going to forgive is yourself. So there you go. So that's it. Just simply read it verbatim. Say thank you very much. Get in your car, drive home, or go take a walk on the beach or in the forest, and just meditate and just let that process do its own thing. And then we're going to get to step 6. So one of the things I do, just to let you know, do this after you've told it to a human. I will do the same thing. I will do the same thing in meditation. I will go into meditation and I'll contact a higher dimensional being, and I will say, here are my fears that have been driving me and keeping me trapped. And I confess to you that I operate from fear, I operate from narcissism, I operate from this in order to blah, blah, blah. And that is part of the 5th step as well. So it says we admitted to ourselves, our sponsor, and a higher dimensional consciousness. So the higher dimensional consciousness will be there with you when you are reading your list to somebody else. But I also find it helpful in meditation to go, and you don't memorize the list, just generally, what you've become aware of after you've meditated on it. You go, yeah, let's say, for example, you say to yourself, I've come to the realization that, what ends up happening is that I'm so afraid of not being loved that I end up lying and conflating and acting out, just so that people will think I'm something I'm not. And that's really self-devaluing. And I just want to confess that I do that. And I realize now I'm not even in control of it. And there you go. All right. So 5th step, just read it to somebody, go and meditate. In your meditations, really take a look at yourself. And coming up, we'll do what step 6 is all about. All right. That's it. Again, if you haven't watched it, go back and watch it from 1 through 4 before you get to this step. I'll see you guys in the next video.